good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BFI Feature Film Festival 2025. I'm Ella Townsend, the Young Talent Coordinator at Film Hub Midlands. I manage and oversee the BFI Film Academy programme for the Midlands region. Today's session is titled Below the Line Crew, focused on the vital roles of props assistant and props mould and model maker, featuring our talented speakers who are also Film Academy alumni here, Harrison and Lucas. So today's session is going to dive into who crafts the objects that make the film worlds feel real. From enchanted relics to everyday essentials, the prop team is behind it all. So this session pulls back the curtain on the art of props, exploring how these unsung heroes source, build, and age items to tell a story. Industry professionals in essential roles will reveal the skills, problem solving, and creative thinking needed to bring these scripts to life. So whether it's a futuristic gadget or a medieval sword, Lucas and Harrison are those who to share the behind the scenes. So I'm going to stop reading my intro. But yeah, thank you both so much for joining. It's so lovely to have you. Um, when I was designing these talks, I thought, yeah, definitely props. So I was just wondering if you're able to first talk about, obviously I met you through Broadway's BFI Film Academy, which is based in Nottingham. So I was wondering if you're able to share your experience of how how you found college and school, and then how you wanted to take part in Film Academy.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go first. I remember during sixth form, I only just started taking up media and filmmaking in sixth form. I hadn't done anything like that before. And then it was my media teacher that got me, that made me aware of the Film Academy course at Broadway in Nottingham. And it was cool because it was like the first environment that I was in where everyone was passionate about filmmaking. Whereas on like at sixth form, everyone was a little bit, didn't really know what they were doing, just picked it as an option sort of thing, thought it might be fun. But on the BFI Film Academy, everyone was passionate about it. It was strange at first because it was like almost almost intimidating because everyone was like really taking it seriously, but it was fun because everyone was taking it seriously, and everyone had their own niche interests and stuff, which fed into like the roles they wanted to pursue. So I remember we had one person who was particularly interested in music and sound recording, so they were the sound recordist and sound designer. And then Lucas was more on the arty side of the stuff. So he was doing production design.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I sort of similar with Harrison. I went to college in Nottingham, studied film studies, photography and art because I knew I wanted to go into the sort of creative industries, but I was still kind of finding my feet. And I found out I came to Broadway all the time where the BFI Academy is based, so I sort of found out about it through that. Um, and yeah, it was a similar thing. It was like finding a group of people that were all sort of into the same thing, but like Harrison said, has had their own niches that they were looking to sort of develop further. And I went in sort of wanting to do art department stuff because I was sort of I've always been a bit of a maker, but didn't really have any idea. So turning up and then having this opportunity to like collaborate with a group of other people all similar age to you who are all passionate about it. Yeah, it was a real good start.
And Harrison, I know that you made films when you were at sixth form, didn't you? Like you made a horror with your family and
yeah,
friends.
yeah. I did. The first sort of little film that I made, the project in our media class was to make a opening scene for what could be a psychological thriller film. So I kept it very simple and just had my dad kill one of my mates and then carry his body to a park, like a kid's play park, and play with it on the roundabout and stuff like that. So well, it was really fun, and I'm still like probably one of the best things I've ever made just because it was so simple and like yeah. But so that was my first sort of flurry into filmmaking, and then I think between that and my next project, which was a music video as part of sixth form, was the Film Academy. So we made the short film as part of that in between them.
Mhm.
But yeah.
And then on the Film Academy course, you were part of the camera team, weren't you, Harrison? Or
No,
did,
I was the producer.
sorry. Oh my,
I put down no, my preference was cinematography, but everyone's preference is cinematography or directing. So I got put in producing, which was fun. I think I produced and I first AD'd the film, which was fun because it was overwhelming at first. But I remember Adam, our sort of mentor that was in our looked after our little team, was very good at helping me through that sort of stuff. And yeah, held my hand quite a lot.
and then Lucas, obviously you came from film and photography and you know, you were behind the camera in that way in terms of cinematography and whatnot. But I remember we had Mike McLaughlin, who may have inspired both of you actually, who is a production designer and head of the art department. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we had a session with Mike one evening as part of the BFI Film Academy, and he came in and he was telling us, I mean, he just sort of gave a really good overview of what the art department sort of was and how, so my understanding originally was it was like this one department, but he kind of showed us that there was a lot more sort of niche areas that you could go into, and it isn't just this one solid department. It feeds into a whole bunch of different departments, especially like the larger the production gets, the more sort of variation, separation between them are, but they are all still collaborative. So he came in and gave a really good session, just going like talking about designing sets. I think he showed us a set that was 2 miles long that he'd designed. I'm pretty sure. I remember that. But the one that, yeah, the thing that really got me was he brought in a load of stunt foam weapons of, well, they were pitchforks and axes, but they looked real and they weren't, they were like light as a feather and made out of rubber. So you could just hit people with them and they wouldn't get hurt. And that was like the first time I'd sort of really, well, it was the first time I've been face to face with an actual film prop.
Yeah,
Um, and it is still like the most baffling experience when you pick up a stunt weapon like that and it doesn't weigh anything. Um, so I think, yeah, that was the sort of the first taste of being like, oh, this is a career sort of path. This is something that you can do and do it
yeah,
well. And yeah,
yeah. It's weird that, that's a job.
yeah, it's
I,
mental,
I
but
always like tell my mates who aren't in the industry because I remember a couple of them saying like they see it as like this really cool thing. Where it's like if you watch film credits, there's
mm,
carpenters, there's electricians,
yeah,
like if you know how to woodwork, you but working on sets is probably the easiest carpentry you're ever going to do.
yeah.
If you're used to building kitchens or building something complicated,
Oh yeah,
then working on sets is
just
probably
work it together
yeah.
safely, obviously, safely, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah.
And then you both were on the course at the same time, which is quite unique. And then Ed, who was part of the vocations talk, was also in the same year of you. And you all went to university, didn't you? Are you able to share what happened, what, you know, after you completed the Film Academy, which would have been February
18.
2018? Yeah,
18.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what happened after that?
So I sort of after the BFI Film Academy knew that I really wanted to go into film, and really wanted to study it further, just because I didn't feel like I was ready to just sort of dive in straight into the industry, and I wanted to learn more and kind of have bit more of the same kind of structure that the academy had of like learning along with other people and like learning about all the other departments. So like uni and film school was probably the best route. So after going to God knows how many open days, decided to go to the University of the West of England in Bristol and just studied like general filmmaking. But the one thing that really won me over there was on my open day, they realized that I wanted to do art department and went, "Oh, you should go have a look at the fabrication department that we have on campus. We don't normally show it." And I went and it was like the best workshop I'd ever seen. Ceramic studio, woodwork, metalwork, 3D printing, you name it, they had it. Um, so I
Were you
decided,
in there a lot? Were you in there a lot with
oh, I
your
lived in that place.
yeah?
Yeah, absolutely lived in that place. Even when I wasn't making films, they were just so open to people like going in. So It was yeah, going to uni. I mean, that was the big draw, but also just being able to kind of experiment and learn, even like learn different departments, because that is some of the best knowledge you'll have on set is knowing what other guys are doing or other people are having to do, so you can work with them and help them out through your work in
Mhm.
a sense. But yeah, it was also just the collaborative being like it was basically academy on an upscale. It was suddenly rather than working with 20 other people, it was working with 100 other people, and it built a real big network. And I'm still in touch with people like that. But we made like all sorts of forms, long form, short form, adverts. So it was a really good way to experiment and also like further sort of develop and find like skills and find the route that I wanted to go down, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, mine was the same. I chose my course. I went to Middlesex in North London. Um, and I chose my course because it was more all-encompassing. There was a little bit of every department, which was cool. And they had obviously lecturers that specified in production design and sound design and stuff like that. So it allowed you to try everything, which was good. I remember thinking, because it's difficult to imagine it's the same with you, Lucas, that like
Mm.
our degrees were probably ruined by COVID a bit.
Yeah, first year was cut short halfway through,
Oh,
basically.
your first year. So
Yeah.
it was my second year. We were my second year project was a short film. I was in a group with a lot of people from Czech Republic. So we were in Czech Republic for, about to shoot our film, and then the Czech Republic went into lockdown. So we had to fly
Mm.
back.
Bloody hell.
So I feel like my uni experience was tainted because of that. Because my third year was then me making my grad film from my bedroom, sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, but it was a good experience, and it allowed me to sort of live in London and set up a base in London, which is where my work is now. So that's maybe probably one of the main benefits of it for me. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sim's been a bit slow for me today. Great. And yeah, as the pandemic definitely did scupper quite a lot. So I know that it also affected Ed whilst he's at university and also Liv when she was there. And also like it paused a lot of film work for Jordan and Faye when they were starting out. Um I just wanted to ask about other exploring other paths like after, you've done uni, you've done the film academy, then you've moved on to uni. Like, were there any kind of other courses or schemes that you were able to progress onto whilst either at uni or finishing uni?
So when I finished uni, it was when BFI Future Skills opened up their applications, and I'd applied multiple times in the past. And if you don't know what Future Skills was, it was a course that was partnership with Disney that would help people get their foot into the industry, into like trainee sort of roles on large scale productions. Um, but you couldn't apply to it when you were in full-time education. So as soon as I graduated, saw applications were open. And with the portfolio that I built over my time at uni with sort of props, costumes, sets, all the stuff that we'd made, shipped off an application and fortunately got on 3 months later and 6 interviews with heads of Lucasfilm and all sorts. Yeah, got a phone call one day and they just went, "Yeah, we want you. Do you want to start next week?" And that was that. So I got pretty lucky post uni that I could go sort of beelined in. Um, but since then, I've also done, there's a company called Talking Point that also do really good courses, sort of all art department based. A lot of collaboration with a union called Film Base as well. So I did one of their prop training courses as well, which was mostly online, and then one day in Brighton, just sort of meeting a prop master and kind of learning about the industry as well, because that was an aspect that we didn't really learn at uni. But I don't know, not sure about you, Harrison, how you progressed.
To be honest, I didn't do any sort of courses after uni. I managed to, well, army crawl through to start working straight away. Um, And well, it took a while to get the ball rolling. I think I got my first job. So I was a runner for a year before I was in props. I got my first job running on a tiny budget feature. I got that off Facebook, and that was the only job I've ever got off Facebook. But I've heard people do it all the time. And then so the producers on that got me on more stuff, and it slowly snowballed into a good base of contacts. But no, I didn't do any sort of courses. I know people that have, and that was at Talk Point. That rings a bell.
But yeah, they're quite big. Like,
Yeah, I've never done it, but I think I know people that have done it and say it and recommend it. But I just tried to start working straight away,
yeah.
um, which worked out in the end.
Yeah.
And I know that you both have quite a lot of transferable skills as whether, like running or like cinematography and editing. Um, so yeah, I was just wondering like how that's actually helped you in terms of breaking into the industry, and then we'll go into that a little bit more in a moment.
Yeah, I think like all the way back to when we were on the film academy. I think that was like my another first introduction into like who does what on a film set, basically. Like a very obviously because it was I mean what there must have been 7 or 8 of us per film group, was there?
Pretty
So
sure, yeah.
yeah,
Like,
so we all had our specific roles and we stuck to them, which was good knowledge for in the future for when I was on a professional film set and I knew how it worked. I knew the hierarchy and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, definitely like completely agree. I mean, I'm sure Ella remembers being on a bridge over the Trent in the middle of winter, absolutely freezing. And even though, yeah, it was like it just gave the good understanding of sort of even from those days of yeah, what other departments do and like how you can work to help each other out. Even like being on set, like knowing when to set up
Mhm.
like props and like when to dress things and when to undress stuff and all that sort of stuff. It was kind of gauged from that, I guess.
Yeah, I think like what because obviously I spent a year as a runner, and as a runner you're kind of there for everyone else. You're helping each
Yeah.
department, which was good because it got me used to how each department worked, and like it gave me a little taster into each department. So I remember I was helping the Sparks one day, I was helping the stunt coordinator one day, and then I eventually helped the props and art team, and that's
Mm.
where I realized on Horde, and that's where I realized that I wanted to do it. So it that being a runner for a year got me used to what everyone does in a film set and gave me a taste of everything, basically. And I'm still in contact with those people as well. So
Yeah. I think as well, like I like before getting into film, I mean, I've worked in kitchens for most of my life, and that sort of even stuff like that, not working directly in the film industry or not doing a course directly in the film industry, I've still learnt skills that have really helped me out in sort of like pursuing and also working in the film industry itself. It's a full-on industry, so working as a chef, I've learnt to like be good on my feet, be like time management, make sure that checking in on people, making sure everyone's okay because it's the same as the film industry. It's like collaborative work. It's one team, one dream. So even stuff like that, they've like those skills that I've learned over what when I was 14 working in a pub kitchen. It's still stuff that I'm putting into practice now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Harrison, I know that you've we met in prep for this, and same with you, Lucas. But I know that you have you've written down some advice that you'd like to share in terms of how to break in and like what opportunities or advice has helped you that maybe you could share with those who have attended today.
Yeah. So my work since I started doing props is pretty much split between long form and short form. Long form being films and TV and all the big stuff, and then short form being adverts and music videos. And I found that short form is a lot easier to break into because um, the designers, who are the people that get me on the jobs, who they employ me, will post the jobs that they've done. So if they've designed a music video for whoever, they'll post it. They'll post loads of stills and they'll tag. You're supposed to tag all of the credits, directors, down all the way down to the runners. Um, so it was very easy to find people. So I literally I think I was watching telly and I saw an advert. I thought that was interesting, or I was watching a music video and thought that looked cool. I'd like to work with them. They look like they know what they're doing. And then I looked it up on Instagram and found Ash Halliburton, um, who does loads of designing work and stuff. I've worked with her for 2 years now. Got a job with her on Wednesday. Um, and emailed her on a whim, and she got me on a Call of Duty commercial the next day, which was massive. It was an insanely big commercial for like a 30-second clip, but whatever. But it was all about timing. And it was just a very casual email. I mentioned that I had a car, so she got me on as like a props runner, I think, and I was driving out a lot and picking up bits from B&Q, picking up whatever. And then I've since worked with her, and now I'm virtually like a prop master for her, sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I just email people. If you see an advert you think's interesting, you see a music video you think's interesting, look it up on just look it up, just find the credits, and they'll all be on Instagram. So find that. Don't I wouldn't message them on Instagram. I'd find their email address, and do it that way. But yeah, it was easy, all about timing. So just keep emailing them, even if they say no the first time they haven't got anything on. Just do it again in a month or so. It's all about getting
Yeah.
lucky with timing to get that first foot in the door, really.
Amazing. And Lucas, obviously we've put both of your bios in the Eventbrite link for this, but you were able to work on Wicked, weren't you? So
Yeah.
like, are you able to share how that opportunity came about in terms of breaking in and any advice that you're able to share?
So that opportunity, I basically pestered my boss that I had on the Future Skills program when I was working on Star Wars: The Acolyte. That job was coming to an end, and my boss had moved on to Sandman season 2 for Netflix. And unfortunately, he said he couldn't take half the team along because they hadn't got the budget. But I just kept in touch with him, and every couple of weeks, I'd sent him a text just to check in. And then it was 2 days after I'd moved back from Reading to Nottingham. I had a missed phone call at 7 a.m. when I woke up from him, and I called him back, and he went, "I'm going to send you a phone number. It's my friend Paul. Give him a ring. I think he's got some work for you." And it was literally just like, okay, cool. Like jumped out of bed, woke myself up, rang this guy and went, "Hi, I hear you have some work going." And he went, "Cool, can you fiberglass?" And I went, "Yeah, I've done it about 3 times in the past.
Yeah.
If so, could I fiberglass? Not really, but I knew my way around a paintbrush." And he was like, "Cool. Yeah, do you want to start next week? I'll send you the info." And then that was it. I had to pack up my room that I'd just unpacked and send it straight down to London to then go and work on yeah, Wicked. I think it was part 2, but also bits of part 1. It was kind of a mix of, but I think we were making stuff for both. But that was yeah, the special effects department. So again, it was like Harrison, it was kind of like getting lucky with timing in a sense that there just so happened to be a need for someone to come in and do fiberglassing, and I pestered my previous boss enough that he was like, "Oh, cool, like you put me forward." Um,
So casual, isn't it?
yeah, it's like it's ridiculously casual. You think it's going to be like the most like closed door,
Yeah.
like got to go through this like whole route of sending your CV and your portfolio and all this. Half the time it is just someone. I got a text the other week from one of the people I worked on Stars with going, "If you're in London next week, we've got a job on He-Man if you want to do it." And unfortunately, I couldn't because I have a job that I have to have my notes in for. But it's
Yeah.
literally, yeah, just a casual, "Hi, how are you? By the way, do you want to work on He-Man?" And I was like, "Oh," at 9 a.m. when I was on my way to work. So it is, yeah. But that's how Wicked came about. And I was ended up working on it for a month as a dailies contract. So that meant my contract literally recurred every single day. Um, so I didn't know how long I was going to be there for. It could have been a few days. It could have been a couple weeks. So yeah, yeah,
Right. And Harrison, I know that obviously you've worked in kind of numerous production roles, but you were also a base runner, weren't you, on Lunar Coal Moon's debut feature Horde. Do you want to share a bit of info about that?
Yeah, so that was interesting how I got that one because it was the production manager who was on my very first job that I mentioned earlier that I got through Facebook. I think that film was like called The Wife and Her House Husband, really tiny, really small, low budget film. I think it was like 200,000, and the director funded it himself, whatever. But the production designer on that, no, not production designer, uh, production manager on that was then, I think it must have been a year later, was working on Horde. And I'd worked with her a few times on music videos and other stuff. So she got me on that. And then I was on it as a floor runner, so I was on set most of the time with the AD department, helping things run smoothly. And then the second AD, who, if anyone doesn't know, is sort of mostly in charge of making the call sheet every day and getting the cast members through hair and makeup on time. And she was getting quite overwhelmed with that because there was loads of different cast members coming in every day while she was doing the call sheet at the same time. So then I fell into base runner, which was basically getting the cast members through hair and makeup on time, which was mega stressful. But they were all really nice people. And yeah, it was fun because it helped me like develop sort of a bit more timing and organizational skills. Not that I could pick out an example of how I do it now, but I'm sure it's definitely affected me subconsciously. Um, but yeah, that was a really fun job, and that was the main inspiration why I wanted to start working in props because they had like this chaotic prop room full of all different types of furniture from because it was set in I think it flips between the 80s and the 90s. So it was all furniture from them, and it was a film about hoarding, but quite a sensitive subject because it was quite dark. But it meant the sets were incredible because they were made to look messy, but they were organized and finely designed and stuff like that. And that was where I actually learned that like this isn't really my job, but how the art department choose furniture and stuff. They go way into character. They look at the character, look at their like sort of socio-economic background. So if it's set in the 90s, this person might not have bought their stuff in the 90s. So their stuff might be from the 80s because they can't afford new furniture, essentially. And that really interested me, and that's why I like character sort of development, contributing to the character within set dressing is what sort of hooked me in. Because that's something I care about, the story and character stuff.
Great, thank you. So now I think it's why you're here to talk about actually what you do and what goes into that. So I was just wondering if you're both able to introduce the role that you work in and the department it sits in, because I was very surprised and I was like, it doesn't just all fit under one.
Yeah. So I'm work as a prop maker, but also so that kind of falls into two classes, well, three classes. There's model makers, mold makers, and painters that work in sort of the overall like sub department of prop making, prop manufacturing. So have mostly worked in model making and mold making. So either creating things and then getting them molded and replicating them, but also like stunt weapons and sort of all that sort of set pieces and details that go on sets. But that department on the larger scale productions that I worked on falls under the prop department, which is sort of more where Harrison kind of works. It's more the sort of sourcing, dressing, sort of working out what needs buying, what needs making. So we fall under that. So my boss was under the prop master, who then was under the art director and the production designers in the art department, which was an office on the other side of the entire studio most of the time. So there's a lot more layers to it than it first seems at first glance. Yeah, but I mean, Harrison's got a pretty different experience, I guess.
Yeah, I remember thinking me and prop makers would be working side by side, but they're quite
Yeah.
separate. There's been occasion which I'll talk about later in the slideshow that we've sort of worked together. Not me and you, but me and prop
Yeah.
makers. So on long form, which is primarily what I'm working on at the minute. I'm what's called a dresser, props dresser. So I will go to different locations where they're filming, or maybe in a studio and dress the scenes. So my sort of first boss is what's called a charge hand, and they're given sets by the prop master to sort of be in charge of. So they have to have the dressing plan, which is made by the art director. So they're working together, and they're in charge of getting the set done. So the charge hand will tell me what to do in the day, basically. And then above that is assistant prop master and then prop master. So the charge hand does work with the art department in making sure that the production designer's vision gets comes across how they designed it. So they'll work with what's called a set deck, who's basically a representative from the art department who knows how it should look. Maybe he's even designed it a little bit. Um, and they'll make sure it looks how it looks. And I'm there to put the curtains up. I'm there to put the sofa in the right place. I'm there to put like a vinyl film on a window or lots of little fixings I'll talk about probably in a little bit.
Yeah, I just add on like I forgot to mention set deck. So we also prop makers worked weirdly closely with set deck as well. Like they just rock up sometimes into our workshop with
Oh, really?
bins of things and just go, can you scuff these up? Can you just like glue some bits onto that? I
Yeah,
ended up I think they brought in some metal vases that we had to make look like space drip like water bottles. So we ended up just sort of getting all these things and then gluing bits on and painting them and scuffing them. But it was sort of like I was at a junior level, and then I had the other mold makers and prop makers, and then there was the coordinators, and then there was my boss as well. So even
mm,
within our tiny department, there was another layer of structure. So I was sort of turning up, and they'd be like, "Can you make us 200 switches for a cockpit?" And I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, cool." We're like, "You got an hour." I get it done in an hour, and then they go, "Can you make us 400 more?" And
wow.
I'm like, "Yeah, all right." But yeah, everyone kind of has their own things that they get given to sort of focus on. And then there's like collaborative stuff as well. Yeah.
I was working with a prop maker once, and he was talking about he worked on the Tarzan film with one of the Skarsgård brothers.
Okay.
And there's a scene in it where he eats an egg, like from the shell, just eats it raw. Um, and the prop maker's job was to make this egg. So I'm not sure what he made out of, probably like a sugar sort of thing. So it was nice, not so it wasn't just a raw egg. And they had months of meetings about it, and this guy, Andy, was working on it for months. Literally had a monthly meeting with the big dogs, with the directors, with the production designer. And they finally got to a stage where they were happy with this egg. And they turned up on set, and the Skarsgård, whichever one it is, said, "Oh no, I'll just eat an egg." And he just grabbed an egg and ate it. So like no one asked him if he was comfortable eating an egg, but this prop maker's just been paid for months to make a
Yeah.
synthetic. It's just a crazy thing to be asked to do, but it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's quite common. I mean, I think I told you two about making those chairs for 2, 3 weeks
Yeah.
and spent weeks and weeks sanding them and making them beautiful. And then we had one of the guys from the art department come into the workshop and go, them stools that you've been making, yeah, we don't need them anymore. Just chuck them away. And we were like, what do you mean chuck them away? Like, well, it's can't keep them because it's the theft of an IP. So put them in the bin, and that was that. Yeah, heartbreaking. But
So obviously you both have experience on like features or kind of like streamers or even just kind of lower forms, so shorts and commercials and music videos. I was just wondering if you're able to share like common on-set protocols and also how you generally work as a film crew.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Lucas, while I refresh my notes?
yeah, so I mean, what I've got most importantly, turn up on time. Turn up early. Turn up early. That's being on time. Turn up on time. You're probably going to be called late. I found that out the hard way when I first started on Star Wars. They were like, turn up 10 minutes earlier. Um, that's the big one. Like time management is sort of a really good thing to kind of have on lock and making sure you're working efficiently, um, and making life easy for yourself as well as everyone around you. Like, 'cause the film industry is t time is money, and especially on the bigger things, they are throwing thousands of pounds away, sort of at all these things every day. So yeah, making sure that you're like kind of say like hitting your quota, making sure that yeah everything's getting done and to a standard. Um, the workshop sort of etiquette is quite different to on-set etiquette, as we're obviously we don't have to stop for filming. We're just there working all night from 8 till 6 every day. Um, but because we're using so many like sort of techniques and materials, it's quite a dangerous working environment. There's a lot of chemicals, a lot of dust, that you have to be cautious about. And like people doing giant builds, we had stuff on like forklifts and suspended from ceilings on like ratchet straps. So it's just like um, obviously making sure that what you're doing is what you should be doing, but also making sure you're aware of what's going on around you and you're like keeping safe. So we always had to wear off like respirators and things like that. And if you saw something that was a bit dangerous, don't just let it carry on, like call it up.
Mm.
Let your superior know. We had one guy firing sparks across the workshop from an angle grinder one day, but it was flying all the way towards the woodworking area, which was full of sawdust. So yeah, he got called up on that very quickly, and then he didn't have a job the week later.
Oh
But
no.
yeah, he was on Wicked though afterwards. I bumped into him, so he was all right. He did fine. I think he learned his lesson. But
I
yeah,
think
I've
the,
obviously must be probably
okay.
different for you, Harrison, sort of dressing and getting sets ready.
Yeah, I think like a kind of a basic one, but especially when you're starting out, it's like big thing I've learned is like don't assume anything. There's loads of in my job. There's loads of props moving from our prop store, which is where we store all the stuff, moving to loads of different places, loads of different sets. And if one of them gets sent to the wrong set, it's a big deal. Especially if it's an important piece of furniture or something like that. Then that because these days are such a quick turnaround. We might be in one day dressing. They'll film it the next day. We'll strike it the next day. But there's also other sets that are being dressed and shot at the same time. So if this armchair is supposed to be in the one set, but it's here, that's a big problem. It's because now there's no armchair for here. It sounds trivial, but like it's it's a big deal because the main actor might have to sit on that very specific armchair and give a big monologue or something like that. So don't assume anything, especially when you're starting out. Like you've got every right to just ask someone who's higher up. So like if I wasn't sure about something say it is putting up these curtains. Say I've got green curtains in my hand, and I'm like, oh, I didn't say green on the dressing plan. I'll go and check with my chart hand rather than putting up the curtains because it might come to it later on that we're finishing up for the day, and be like, oh no, they're green curtains. They should be red curtains or something like that. So just double check if you're unsure about something. Double check with someone who does know. Um,
I think
so
yeah,
okay.
that's probably like one of the best bits of advice is like if you're unsure, just ask, especially like when you're starting out. I mean, I'm still when I am working in the industry, I'm still learning as I go. And they know that. Everyone that you're working with knows that you're probably not going to know everything because you're like newer to the industry than they are. Some people had like 4 years experience, but
Mhm.
they're also the best people to talk to. Like just be social with everyone. Obviously, don't just stand about nattering. Like you got work to do, but kind of have these conversations. And if you're unsure, yeah, talk to people. And that is it's one of the best ways to learn. I learned so much just from being unsure about maybe one thing I was doing and then going and they then tell me three different methods of how I could go about that one specific task.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's mad the amount of knowledge that these people hold and can just like go, oh yeah, just do it like this. And you're
Yeah.
like, why did I never think about that?
Yeah, because they've been doing it for 10 plus years.
Yeah,
You're not expected to have 10 plus years experience when you've only started. This is maybe your first job.
yeah. And
Um,
even like and that's the thing, it's just like being nice to everyone, treating everyone the same. Like it was the big lesson that I remember Ella and Roger teaching us on the BFI Academy was like, don't be a dick overall.
Sure, that was the
It's
first
fine.
thing on the first day.
I'm pretty sure it was literally the first thing we got taught on that. And it still rings true. Like I heard about Trainee getting kicked off Star Wars because they were talking bad about one of the ADs while walking around the back lot of the set. They weren't even on set, but the head of costume happened to walk past them at that time, who was friends with the AD they were talking about, and because they got overheard, they didn't have a job after that. It's stuff as simple as that. So just make sure you're like, yeah, you know what you're saying. You're not saying anything that you shouldn't be, but also
Yeah,
just treating everyone with respect, and you'll get treated with respect back.
yeah,
No point turning up and just not putting in the effort and treating people poorly and then getting confused and upset why you've no longer got a job or everyone takes a dislike to you, basically. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd also say like still try and be as social as you can.
Yeah.
Like when you're at work, try and join in on the chat. Try and join in if everyone's joking around because then they'll like you and they'll remember
Yeah.
you. They might remember you for one amazing joke you did. And like, oh, remember that guy who said that thing? Oh, yeah, get him on this job. Like that might get you the job.
Yeah. I
But
remember. Sorry, no, carry
there
on.
you go.
I was just saying, like, I remember one day I hadn't really spoken to my boss, Jim, on Star Wars very much because he was like this big, he was always in the office. And then one day he came down on a lunch break and he was wearing a Jamiroquai cap. And I just was like, oh, I like your cap, mate. And he was like, you like Jamiroquai? And I was like, yeah, yeah, brought up on it. And just ended up having like a good half-hour chat with him at lunch about Jamiroquai.
Yeah.
And after that, he like would come up to me and start talking to me about music all the time. And it was like just even like things like that on your lunch break, just having a chat about normal stuff that isn't work,
Yeah, yeah.
get you like so much further and remembered.
Yeah, yeah, same. Like I literally last week I was on a set on the job I'm working with on now, and I was working with the same prop team about a year ago. And this charge hand, like I don't know why, but I was a little bit intimidated by him. I hadn't worked with him much and stuff. And then I found out last week that he's a Newcastle fan, the same as me.
Nice.
And now he's messaging me when he can't go to the games and like say he messaged me today like do I want a ticket for the West Ham game? Like
That's
just like it's so casual, but like it makes me feel more comfortable
yeah,
having talked to him about other things outside of work because it just makes it more casual.
yeah.
Oh, another thing I learned last week. Bless him, I saw a trainee do this. If you're trying to lift something heavy,
Oh,
get someone to help you.
yeah. Bend your knees,
In,
not your back, and get
yeah,
help.
bend your knees, not your back. Get someone to help you. Because bless him, he tried to move this cabinet because he didn't want to, because everyone was doing their own jobs. Pull someone off a job. You can definitely pull someone off a job if you need something moved right away. He tried to lift this cabinet up and dropped it in front of the prop master. And it wouldn't have been a thing. The prop master definitely wouldn't have thought anything of it, but he was really embarrassed about it. So just get help. If you need help, it's not, especially when you're starting out, you're not expected to do everything on your own. But yeah.
A lot of lessons there, yeah, definitely. Don't assume.
Mm.
Don't blag it.
No,
Like,
no, because like if you don't know something and try to do it anyway, you might mess it up beyond
Yeah,
repair or mess it up that requires even more work to fix it.
yeah,
mm,
So just double check. Yeah.
and always be respectful. Watch what you say and who
yeah.
you say it in front of. So I think because you've shared some really great insights and responsibilities and duties, obviously depending on low form or high form, like what does your week or month or day look like? Obviously, Lucas, you've done dailies, and
Mhm.
also you've done the same, Harrison, whereas you've both done kind of longer longer form projects. Like what do those hours look like for you in terms of coming on set, finishing and whatnot?
I think when we spoke about it the other day, I thought Harrison would be sort of more like following call sheets, like the documents that are given out to the production crews. to let them know what time they need to be on set and when filming starts and all that sort of stuff. I thought, even like having worked in the prop making industry, I didn't know this about Harrison, that they also start six to like it's usually six, no, 8 o'clock to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. I thought as part of the sort of props and like dressing that you'd be much more involved with like the kind of production crew timings and turning up at the crack of dawn and leaving at God knows what time in the evening, but
Mm.
that isn't the case.
No, I think like when I'm on long form, which is mostly what I'm doing at the minute, um, I'm in the dressing team. So yeah, it is turn up at a location or at the studio, wherever the set is, at 8,
Yeah.
dress, have a tea break at 10, have an hour lunch at 1, and go home at 6. It's really quite a well structured day. And
Yeah.
then because we tend to dress dress the set, and then the shoot crew come in the day after, film it, or they might be there for a few days, and then when they're finished, we take it away again. We just do the reverse of what we did when we set it up. Um, Contrary to that, if it's on short form, so like something like a commercial or a music video, you're doing you're doing all of that. So you'll get in. All the props will arrive. They might be hired props, so you have to check them all in so you know where they all came from. And then you dress it, and then you stay with the camera while they film it to make sure everything goes right. And then take it away again at the end of the day or at the end of the week, which is a lot more intense
Mm.
doing everything. Like whereas the thing I said about checking in the props if they're hired, that will be done if you're on long form by the stores team.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any of that. You're literally just there to dress and put the furniture in the right place, hang the curtains up, whatever. So that's how they them days vary.
Yeah. We sort of, so once you turn up in the workshop, especially, there's so much work going on, especially on the larger stuff, that it is like you go to your coordinator. So when I was in the mold room, I went to this guy Chris. When I was doing model making, I'd go to this guy Ruggiero. Um, and I'd turn up in the morning unless I knew from the previous day that I had something to crack on with. I'd turn up and I'd be like, what's on the board today? What needs to get done? And then like what needs prioritizing, how much, yeah, and then just finding out basically sort of making a plan for your next like few hours. We were lucky as well. We got start at 8, tea break at 10, hour for lunch. We even had a tea break in the afternoon, which was
Yeah, we do that as well. I didn't
yeah.
want to.
But it's great. But yeah, you kind of like from that structure your day, but then it was so sort of there was so much needed for this like show that stuff would turn up halfway through the day and they'd suddenly be like, someone would come and drag you out and be like, oh, can you jump on that and just give those guys a hand sanding this 9 foot long table for 30 minutes and stuff like that. So there's kind of structure to it, but there was also always a little bit of it's like like how do you say the word? It's kind of a bit more like sometimes quite organic, like the working style.
Yeah, that's it.
Um, and like you were saying, like working on shorter stuff, because I've done a couple short films in the past year while the strikes have sort of still been affecting the industry. And that is like if you're lucky, you've got an assistant maybe, but it's kind of like a one-man show, getting stuff in, staying there, like you said, making sure everything runs right, and then taking all the dressing down and moving on to the next job.
Yeah, it can be quite intense. I
Yeah.
did a few couple weeks ago on a commercial where we're in this really big house, but it's a really big like London house, and we had 5 different sets in 5 different rooms.
Mm.
Then we had to dress. We had to get there in the morning early, dress, and then the shoot crew would come in as we're dressed in another room, shoot that. When they're finished, we have to strike that room to get rid of it, and then they'd move. It was chaos all in one day.
Yeah.
Whereas on something like long form, it's a lot more chill day. You can fit in a tea break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go make a toasty at lunch. I think I lived on toasties the entire
Yeah.
time I was on Star Wars. It was great.
Um, Maybe we'll talk about toasties in a bit.
Yeah, fair.
There's a work-life balance, but I think it's really you two have put in some really great prep in terms of equipment and resources, whether that's for your department, for general on-set life, but really kind of role-specific equipment. So I was wondering if Harry's able to cue Harrison's slides, please.
So this first slide, So I was on Netflix's Black Doves. I think we finished it last year about March time. And I'm now working with this prop team again on something else. But this slide was probably the most interesting bit about that job. I can now share these images because it's out. This is a good example of where the prop dressers and the prop makers do work together sometimes. So the prop makers, so someone like Lucas, made this orange target that you can see that just slots onto this 3x3 length of timber. So it was their job to make that bit, and then it's my job as a dresser to instate it into the scene. So they wanted it to look like these posts had been sort of hammered into the ground, and they're always there, basically. It was supposed to be this like a training ground for shooting or knife throwing or something like that. And me and the charge hand went to go and check out the location to see what we could do, and we realized that the ground was just way too hard to do anything. We even like took a pickaxe along to try and like dig it up and get it in, but there was no way we were going to stick it into the ground. But the way we solved it is we had these sort of steel plates that you can see that were really heavy. I think they must be like 20 to 15 kilograms each. We had these from a different set that had these long sort of flagpoles that screwed into the bottom. So there's got a hole in the middle, and all we did was put a screw up through the middle into this timber, and then put it on the ground, cover it up with the dirt to look like it was hammered into the ground. So that was a good example of that sort of the resourcefulness that it sometimes takes. Even though it is a massive production, they like it when they can reuse stuff for different jobs.
Yeah.
And I've noted here I'll show my kit later in a later slide, but for this we just use like screws and an impact driver, which is like a drill, if you don't know. Next slide, please, Harry. So these two images, one on the left and one in the middle. Another bit of essential kit is fishing wire. Really cheap. You get it from anywhere. Get it from Amazon. Get it from a fish tackle shop or whatever. But we basically use it a lot to hang stuff, like sort of invisibly. So most often it's if we're in a location and there's a screw hole in the wall for a picture that needs hanging up, but we want the picture to hang at a different place, maybe lower, we'd hang this fishing wire around that existing fixing and hang it lower. So the fishing wire is pretty much invisible because it's really thin, sort of invisible stuff. This was on a commercial where I turned up and I was asked to make the phone look like it was floating because I'm an expert in making phones look like they're floating. I've definitely done that before. And this is how I did it. So I used sort of two C stands with arms on, and I drilled like tiny holes into the phone case and hung fishing wire. So that middle picture is the final product that was shown on screen for like half a second in the advert. That took half a day to figure out. And then the picture on the right is just another little trick that I was taught by a prop master. So under the sink there is just that white steamer that sort of has an open top. The bucket's just there to raise it. And the director wanted the washing up in the bowl of the dishes to look like they'd just been washed, so it was steaming. So all we did was put a steamer under the sink. This was a set, so there was no piping or anything like that. So it just came up through the plug hole. One thing though, if you do use this trick, make sure the steamer always has water in it, otherwise it can trip the electrics. Because the gaffer wasn't very happy with me on that day. Next slide, please, Harry. So this is another bit of like sort of resourcefulness that we had to do in one shoot. This was for I think it was a grime music video. I'll show you the next slide's got the final product on. But we basically had this washing machine drum, and we found on the day this scrap bit of sort of MDF wood. You can see it's a janky shape. And luckily I had these sort of caster wheels in my bag. So I just screw them on in the right places to make it look like a washing machine was turning around. And then Harry, if we could show the next slide, and then that's what it turned out. That's the shot. It was supposed to be like there was money flying around it, which was, yeah, I thought it was cool. But so yeah, that was just another tiny bit of cowboy making that I might be asked to do. And then the next slide, Harry, is another one. So on the third picture in, you can sort of see like this wooden lectern thing that was hired. So we basically weren't allowed, you're not allowed to alter hired things, obviously, because you got to return it. But the director basically wanted this, I don't have a picture of the judge sitting there, but there was a judge with the hammer. And he wanted this lectern thing he was on to be higher and a wacky colour. So we had this leftover sort of, I don't know what you call it. I'm sure the carpenter just called it like bendy wood. It's like a really thin MDF that sort of has notches in that sort of bends.
The flexi ply.
Flexi ply.
Yeah,
There you go.
love that stuff.
There you go. So all I did was just screw in sort of these little lengths of timber to the dimensions of this already existing lectern that we had, and slot them over the top and painted it, and then now it looks like some sort of big licorice thing. So it's just an example of like sort of the basic bits of different sort of skills. So like, I'm not a carpenter by any means. I would never claim to be, but sometimes it comes in handy to know that sort of stuff. And then the next slide. The next slide is the strangest thing I've ever been asked to make on the day. So this was a really low budget comedy short for BBC. It's on BBC iPlayer. And it's called This Is Gay. We turned up on the day, and me and Graham in that picture there on the left were asked to make an umbilical cord for the shot you can see on the right. Very high art style of shot. So what we did there was we went to the shop, got some sort of clear plumbing, plastic tubing, used a glue gun to make it bumpy, and then painted it pink. So it's just, yeah, small sort of stuff that I'm sure is nowhere near the standard that Lucas works on. But it's useful stuff. Sorry?
We'll see my slides in a sec. I've got some pink bumpy stuff as well to show.
Oh, nice. And then the next slide shows this is my kit. This is my it's not very, but this is my basic kit that I take to every job. I don't know if this is overwhelming, but you don't need this when you're starting out. In a minute, I'll show you what is good to have in your kit. But as you can see there, sort of pencil case, there's a drill, driver, scissors, socket set, hammer, tape measure, blah, blah, blah. That's what I carry around. That's sort of the most used stuff. There's stuff there that's surprisingly used a lot, like lighter fluid. We're not starting fires. That's just to remove stickers and labels off bottles and stuff like that. It's really good because it's obviously high in alcohol or whatever. So it's really good to just douse it and rub it off. And yeah, when you're starting out, you're not expected to have all of this stuff. If you come across a job when you're dressing or whatever at work, and you need, say, an impact driver, which is the yellow thing at the bottom, and you need one of them, someone else in the team is going to have one. So just ask to borrow it for that job. But don't take it home. They might be upset with you if you do that. This sort of stuff, if this is good information, I'm not sure, but I'm self-employed, so this sort of stuff I can buy on my business card, and it's sort of tax deductible. It counts as expense for me, if that's useful. I don't use all of this every day, but this is the most used stuff that crops up. And the next slide, a couple of useful things. So that in the top left is just the bag that I carry around. That from the previous slide fits all in that bag, basically. Another little thing I've found is good to have that everyone seems to be impressed by is this little fixings box I've got on the top right. that's got stuff like pegs, fishing wire, elastic bands, sort of drawing pins, paper clips, and stuff like that. Um, it's just always useful for little fiddly jobs that might get asked to do that require something small. And then on my belt, I always have sort of so on the bottom picture, I have this sort of Stanley knife type thing with the replaceable blade, a multi-tool, which I would recommend getting. You can get them for pretty cheap. I usually have a tape measure as well, just like sort of strapped onto my belt. Um, it's good to have it on your belt rather than your kit because you're going to need it. You might need it in a situation, and you don't want to run and get it from your kit. And also, it's good for when, like, say, your boss or your charge hand says, "Oh, have you got a knife on you?" You can just whip it straight from your belt, rather than saying, "Oh, just got to get it from my kit." And the next slide shows sort of the very bare essentials what I'd recommend getting for your first day doing this job. You can probably get all of this for under 15, 20 quid. Just get a pencil case with pencils and Sharpies are the main thing. You get a highlighter if you need to. But Sharpies are probably your most essential bit of kit. Try not to lose them. Try not to let anyone nick them because that happens a lot. This is mainly just for labeling props, labeling boxes and stuff like that. You always need a Sharpie. Scissors and a Stanley knife are always useful for, again, cutting up these boxes, cutting up open whatever. And then fishing line, just because it's so cheap, you might as well have it in your kit. And it's so cheap and small that it's good to have. And then this red thing next to the fishing line, if no one knows, it's called a squeegee. Similar to like the squeegee you clean glass with, but this is like a felt tipped squeegee. So you use that for putting on like vinyl film onto windows or vinyl film onto something like that, onto furniture or anything, to basically change the color of it. But they're so cheap, you get them on Amazon for next to nothing. You might as well have that in your kit. And that is vinyling. I'm not sure if I've explained it very well, but vinyling is the job that no one wants to do. But if you get good at it, then you're going to be very useful to the people at work.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, because I know it's kind of like wallpapering. It's like wallpapering, but for windows in a way. So you have to like put,
Yeah.
and it's a real skill and like no bubbles and no creases and
Yes. Yeah. It's yeah. I remember the first time I did it, I completely butchered it. And I still do now, to be honest. Um, no one, I don't, I've never met anyone that's like a master of it. But if you can get competent at it, it's a good skill to have.
and before we jump on to your slides, Lucas, I just thought because you've included budgets on your slides, Lucas, of what you've
Yeah.
worked on. What budgets do you work with, Harrison? Like, do you get given one? Is it something that you're in charge of, or is that the is that kind of within your responsibilities and duties?
Budgets for say like props and stuff like that. So no, that's not in my responsibilities. I just turn up on the day and receive the props and make sure they're in the right places. So on something like long form, the budgets for the props would be controlled by the art department who do all of the booking for the props. Um, and then on short form, it will be the production designer who I would work with quite closely, but they do all that budget stuff. I'm not really involved in that stuff, thankfully. I don't think I'd be very good at that at all. But no, that's not really part of my job.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. So, Lucas,
Yeah.
it's your time.
Cool. So this is my pink fleshy stuff that I did. So this was for a short film that I worked on uh just before I got onto the Future Skills program. So this was like my post-grad film about sound designers, so Foley artists making sound effects for naughty films. Um, and they kind of in the film, it's kind of hinted that they fall in love, but the way that they do it is by holding hands inside of a chicken. So the director decided that he wanted an internal shot of their hands inside the chicken. And we had 50 quid budget for that, like the entire art department. So that included our dressing, which mostly ranged in raw meat and like tissue paper and God knows what, just decorating all the sets. But this sort of was a good example of like working with absolutely no money to try and get the best outcome you can. So I think I went bin diving at my uni and found a cardboard tube. And then to save on money for paint, I just bought pink tissue paper and like cream colored felt, sort of fleshy tones. So then I didn't even have to spend any money on paint to make it look any better. So yeah, this was sort of like a good example. And all the only tools I used was like a paintbrush, some glue, scissors, and then yeah, a lot of Vaseline to make it look nice and slimy at the end. And then if we go on to the next slide, this is a film that I worked on last year, and again, it's sort of very low budget stuff. We had 250 quid for the whole art department, which included transforming these two lovely gents in the middle photo into aliens after a heavy night out in Bristol. But because we wanted to spread the money sort of equally across all our locations and everything, it sort of seemed like a good route was to go down paper mache. So the alien head on the left, for the most part, is made out of cardboard. And again, from the trick I learned on the chicken interior, it wasn't painted. That's just colored tissue paper. And unfortunately, when you get it wet, the colors kind of bleed, so it blended in with each other quite nicely. Um, it says I used tights as well, so the eyes were actually made out of like half ball kits. I just went to like the range and found like make your own ball kits, cut one in half, and then wrapped it in a material from a pair of tights I got from Primark. And it meant that he could see out, but you couldn't see his eyes beneath. And I think it works. We
Yeah.
had to paint his goatee to match the green eyebrows. And the costume rental that we got the gold shirt from wasn't very happy about the amount of red face paint that we had maybe got onto the shirt. We tried to be as careful as we could, but I think we got away with it. Um, and then so onto the next slide. This is the more high-end work that I've done. So when I was working on Wicked, the biggest job that we did was making the cogs that you can see like on the side of the wizard's train. So we had to fiberglass those, and like fiberglassing is basically like sort of super strong adhesive and sheets of like glass fibers that are threaded together, and you basically mash it together, and these sheets melt from the epoxy resin that you use, and it binds it all together and makes it super strong. It's basically like really high-end paper mache. It kind of all these kind of run into each other. But as you can see in the photo on the right, we only had to build half of the train because it was only ever shot from one side. But that wasn't a decision by the other departments on the film. That actually was when the job came to us in the workshop, and my coordinator Paul turned to the guys and went, "How many angles do you see it from?" And they went, "Oh, you only see it from one angle." We went, "Cool, we're only making four then," because they wanted us to make eight. And it's just like even things like that, like the whole of the production hadn't realized and hadn't thought about the fact we were only making one side of the train, so we'd only have to like build four with the cogs. So yeah, it helped cut down on time. They still took a long time, but it was cool. That was the one that yeah, I got a phone call and suddenly I was there the next week. Um,
Oh, sorry.
no, that's all right. No, go for it.
Lucas, there's a question about fiberglass and Wicked.
Oh, cool.
So this is from Storm, who said, fiberglass seems quite specialist. So which mediums must you be able to work with to be able to be generally employable? And are there any particular design or art skills that are more sought after than others?
Okay. So I only learned fiberglass when I got onto working on Star Wars, and they just were like, "Oh, have you done it before?" And I said no, and I just got shown how to do it from scratch. So it's not a skill that you essentially need. I mean, I got fortunate that that's what they needed specifically for Wicked for that one month that they just needed someone to come in. But I wouldn't say it's an essential skill. Like for you should, for the most part, if you don't know something on a job, they will train you. and that's what happened with me. For like overall skills for prop making, um, technical drawing is good. I'm not great at it, but if you can draw something in 3 dimensions and work out measurements from a drawing, um, that's a really good visual aid and a really good skill to have. Also, it helps explain to other people. Um, Having a keen eye for detail as well. You will end up sanding numerous amounts of things. Most of prop making, when it comes down to it, is just sanding stuff and making it super smooth and ready to go to the painters and the weatherers, who then will probably gouge bits out of your nice smooth surface and make it all rough. Um, yeah, I think just like a general knowledge of kind of like craft skills. So I went into the industry with sort of a decent understanding of electronics, but nothing crazy. I don't know how to do like my own coding or anything like that, but I can make LEDs light up. Um, yeah, woodwork is a really good one to have, and like working with materials like metal and plastic. If you have some experience with those mediums, it will all sort of work for you. There are like courses that you can get that are run by sort of prop making companies all over the country. If you can afford to do those courses to build the skills, they are really good, but they also cost a hell of a lot of money. And I personally have never done one and probably couldn't afford to. But it's yeah, you don't need to be the best of the best to get your foot in. I knew a guy, he went to the National Film and Television School, and then he got a traineeship on Star Wars as well. And he'd gone to the school, paid all this money to do the model making thing, and then they had him sat super gluing stuff onto boxes for 3 weeks. And that's what he did. And then that was his daily's contract done. So don't feel like you need to be like a whiz at every single sort of craft skill, basically, if that helps. Um, yeah, we'll go on to the next one, which actually is different. So these ones was on Star Wars The Acolyte. This was the most money that we had, or the biggest production I've ever worked on. Our department, I couldn't say how much we spent, but that's the overall budget. So for this, the biggest job that I worked on was this one on the right, this sort of mechanical structure behind the main character. Um, that was a really big collaborative piece that was between me and one of the other model makers in the workshop. So he designed it. He got uh, this sort of concept art from the art department and some technical drawings, and then he took it into his CAD software. So a lot of like model makers will be like using CAD. There's a software called Rhino. I don't know how to use it, and it's really expensive. But again, if you can learn that, great. A lot of the guys use a software called Fusion 360 for 3D modeling, and that does basically the same thing, but it's free. I use that all the time at the minute. So, but yeah, Paul basically designed how we were going to build these, and it was then getting pieces 3D printed, which were then sent to us in the mold room where we molded them, and then we were casting a lot of the bits out of sort of expanding foam, which I'd never used again until on this job. Sort of, I'd use like foam in a can, but nothing on the level that we were using. And it then got assembled on set, and then the lights team and the rigging team came and made sure it was all safe and wasn't going to land on anyone's heads because there was a big metal scaffolding pole down the middle. So they weren't light, but everything else was made out of like lightweight material to keep it safe. And then on the left, just in the bottom right corner, I know the photo is really dark, but there's what remains of a stool that I got asked to make. So I got pulled out of the mold room, and Jim, my boss on Star Wars, was like, "Can you? We've hired this stool from a prop hire, but we can't damage it in any way." But he didn't tell me how they were damaging it. I was like, "Okay, cool." He was like, "Can you make two?" So I then spent the next 2 weeks making the most meticulous copies of these stools because I thought it was a bit of a test set by him, and I was like, I want to show off that I know what I'm doing with woodworking. So I made it really meticulous, got it down to like the millimeter. And then 2 days later, I came into work and one of them was outside and someone had taken a power sander, so just a big old motor with a sanding disc on it, and gouged big chunks out of it. And I went in and I was like, "What's going on with that chair?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't know, mate." And no one could give me an answer. And then about 2 weeks later, I saw the other trainee from the art department, Lois, who'd been photographing sets, and she was like, "Oh, I saw your stool on set." And I was like, "Oh yeah," and she was like, "Yeah, it was a pile of sort of charred rubble and ash." And I was like, "Oh," and it turns out that they wanted them to set fire to them, but they hadn't told me that. But again, it was cool because it was, I mean, it was fine. I was ha fine with it. A little bit salty, but it was like still a good exercise, and I got to show off that I did know what I was doing, but woodworking a bit. So it has its benefits. And then on to the next slide. This is sort of I couldn't access my kit to take a nice photo like Harrison, so I've sort of assembled a sort of mishmash of the essential bits for sort of prop making and mold making. So same as Harrison, we've got our trusty tape measures. There's nothing better than measuring multiple times before you cut anything. Trust me, making those stools, I found that out the hard way when one of the legs was too short and it wobbled. So I had to basically take it all apart again. Scalpels. So we also have craft knives, but especially in the mold room, we use scalpels a lot because it helps, firstly, cutting molds open. And you have to cut them in a certain way that they can come back together. So you haven't got like seam lines, or you get this thing called flashing, which is where like silica plastic leaks between the two parts of the mold, and just makes cleanup really difficult. On the left, we've got safety gear. So every day, all day, basically, apart from on the break, I was wearing one of those respirators because a lot of the stuff that you work with, it's whether it be MDF or even sawdust, the 3D printers kick out toxic fumes. The chemicals we worked in the mold shop kicked out toxic fumes. So you didn't want to breathe in anything that was basically in the air in the workshop. We had extraction units, but we were obviously just playing it safe, and it was mandatory that they were worn at all times. Uh, so basically, we didn't end up suing Disney for future lung problems and stuff like that, and also just looking after our own health. Same with the eye goggles. I notoriously got the nickname goggles from the amount of chemicals I splashed in my eyes in my first few weeks on Star Wars. And they went out and bought me the ugliest pair of safety goggles that they could. So I then went and bought my own nice pair that I then wore. But again, it's another essential, especially when like working with products and power tools. You don't want a saw blade snapping and flying in your face and hitting you in the eye, or a drill bit. I've had close calls, unfortunately, had my glasses on, so haven't ended up needing to go to the hospital. In the middle, it's sort of more kind of essential bits for the mold room, and also the prop making, so sandpaper and spot filler. So spot filler, it's like a two-part paste that you mix together, and you can fill holes in props and sort of voids of places, and it's really nicely sandable. So if you want to get a really smooth finish on a prop, you can like fill in imperfections and then sand it all back really nicely and get it super smooth. And sandpaper is your best friend and your worst enemy because it can hide every single mistake, but it also takes so long, and you will be doing it all the time. But it is also, I found it quite therapeutic. Like we were allowed to have like one headphone in while we were doing sanding work, so I get a podcast on and just sit there, either a podcast or really intense music, and sit there and just have a proper full-on sanding session of just getting through bits and bobs. G clamps as well. They're really good for holding together either like wood, if you're doing woodwork and making sort of bigger set pieces, or we use them to hold molds together, especially when we were doing like expanding foam, um, as the pressure from the foam would want to push the mold open, and that would completely ruin the piece you're making. So we would cover them in these clamps, and they'd have like some molds, we'd have 20 clamps on something like this big. So they're really helpful, really good to have. Not essential to buy. Our production, both productions I worked on in the mold room supplied loads of these, but it would be good to have like a decent, like a couple in your kit if needed. And then on the right, I mean, I'm Makita superiority, right? But um,
Whoa.
no, power tools. Power tools. Again, I'm the same as Harrison. I have a drill driver and an impact driver. They're the two sort of essentials that we needed on the daily basis. I started on Star Wars and I didn't own either of them. Unfortunately, one of the guys who was working on it had a spare set that he was wanting to sell. So I ended up buying it from him, I think for 100 quid for the two, which was a major discount. Um, so people, and even then, the batteries, he gave me one battery and then I charged it on my boss's charger at the end of the day every day. And if my battery ran out, I just asked one of the other guys in the team for a battery and everyone was fine about it as long as they got them back at the end of the day. But we all had our names written on them. That's one thing. Write your name on every bit of kit because I had my tape measure nicked for a week and then I walked past one of the senior model makers and she had it on her desk and I had to ask for it back, but she was one of the most terrifying people I've ever met. But in doing that, she ended up chatting to me about music and films and it actually ended up being really sound with her, so it worked out. But yeah, make sure people aren't taking your things. As it says on the top, so our kit's kept on site for the most part in the workshops. Um, as we're there all day, every day, we're not really moving around to different sets or locations. So I have a big chest sort of set of drawers for all my smaller tools, and then I have like a Makita carry case for my drill and drill driver that I keep all my drill bits in as well. So you don't have to worry about it being like super portable. Like Harrison obviously has his day bag that he just can fit everything into and take from place to place. For us, once you're in the workshop, you usually get your own little desk, your own little workspace, and you can set up there and make it like your little home from home. And just keep all your stuff there. So it's quite handy, to be honest. But yeah, that's a general overview, just sort of like the main bits that you'll be needing for prop making.
Amazing. So the screen industry really is funding B&Q and Screwfix and all the
Oh yeah.
other
Oh
DIY
yeah.
shops. Yeah, because my sister, when she used to work in a workshop for when she did window fittings, and she was like, "Do I do DeWalt or do I do Makita?" And I was like, "I can't answer that." So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely like tool wars going on.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
got I just want to just quickly blast through the final parts that obviously we prepared for, and then we'll get onto the Q&A bit, I promise. So you've mentioned. I'd just like you to just quickly talk about like the importance of passion in your work and how that passion helps you thrive in challenging environments.
Yeah, I'll go. I mentioned earlier about I enjoy contributing to the characters and the story of the film through prop making, well, not making, but dressing and stuff like that. That's where I get my passion from. So on the side, I'm still trying to make my own films and write things like everyone else is. So I enjoy it when I can play something or fix something in a set that clearly contributes to this character behind the scenes of the character. I'm struggling to come up with an example, but that's where I get my sort of passion and drive from. Like, if it's a really difficult day, I remind myself that I'm contributing towards something I love, which is film. Um, Even on commercials, I can convince myself that I'm contributing to something decent, even though it's just a money making commercial. Um, and also with props, you can see your work on the screen. Like you can literally see I'm watching something and I go, I put that mug on that shelf. Or yeah, I built that chair that's now rubble or whatever for Lucas.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a runner for a year, um, I I remember struggling for a bit about how I'm contributing to the film. Runners are very important jobs, don't get me wrong, but I found it easier when I was in props to be able to see the work that I'd done when it came out. It was like another layer of gratification when the thing came out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely like sort of similar lines. Just like firstly, yeah, kind of being able to see your work so visually and being like, I did that. That was me. It's really cool. It's really cool. No matter what it is, even like on like the little short films I've worked on, when you see the final thing and you're like, oh, it actually worked. It looks cool. Like that, that's pretty sick. Like I sort of find a lot of inspiration in like the prop kind of replication world as well. So there's like a load of people, like, big fans of film that will just like at home as passion projects make props. And it's kind of like there's a little idea in my head that I'm like, maybe I'm making the next thing that's going to be like what every prop nerd wants to make at home, like the
Yeah.
next Blade Runner blaster or the next lightsaber. Like I got to make two lightsabers while I was on Star Wars, and that was pretty nuts. Just getting to do, yeah, sorry to flex, but used for the first pistol whip with a lightsaber in Star Wars as well. So when I was watching the show and I saw the bad guy get whacked across the face, I was like, I
No
made that
way.
exact lightsaber. So that is the stuff, just like, yeah, stuff like that. It makes it really cool. It makes you feel, yeah, part of it, part of the bigger image.
Yeah.
Like thinking like so many people are just, even like you said, like even like seeing a mug that you've placed, but then thinking about like thousands of people have seen that mug be placed in the
Yeah.
background of that shot. Maybe they're like, oh yeah, that's a nice mug. It's just mad. It's such a cool thing to be part of.
No, it's great. So I know that you've both mentioned like skills beyond the basics, so how to do things safely. So obviously like heavy lifting and not trainees doing it on their own and keeping
Mhm.
it organized and working with chemicals and whatnot. But is there anything that are there any like courses or any additional like training or just general knowledge that you're kind of keen to be aware of, just so you stay safe at work and also those who you work with?
I learned a lot of my skills from my dad. Because I used to work with him. He fixed garage doors, and I used to make things with him. Like we did our decking in his garden. So I'd recommend doing stuff like that. What's a big part of my job is moving furniture.
Mm.
So move furniture at home. If you know someone moving house, help them move house. Because you don't have to be strong to be able to pick up a sofa. You just have to know how to do it in the right way. So it's easier, grab the right placements. It sounds simple, but like not everyone can lift things heavy, and you don't need to be strong to do it. You just need to practice, and you'll get better at it. So I'd say, like Lucas was saying, make things. You can make things at home. Try with woodworking, whatever. But with my job, move furniture. Like literally move your bed around, move the sofa around, and help people do stuff. Um, because there's all sorts of little tasks like that that go into my day that become useful.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's a strange one. So a lot of the safety stuff, especially for the prop making at the start for production, they usually will try and get whoever's not trained on them on the larger scale stuff. So I was when I started on Wicked, I was too late to get forklift certified, which was a shame because that would have been sick getting to like skirt about in a forklift. Um, but they said that if I was there earlier, they would have got that. But that is a very good skill to have already on your CV. It's not cheap to get a forklift certification, so if you can get on a job and then go, I'd like to learn how to drive a forklift. Firstly, they'd probably be like, sick, that's really helpful for us. Also, yeah, and then hopefully they'd be able to get you training. Um, Kind of just general health and safety is always good to know. And a bit of first aid never goes amiss. There's always like a chance that someone can hurt themselves. I cut my hand multiple times on Star Wars, and just being able to like stop and be like, I need to go and clean this and get a plaster, and just sort of know what to do if someone else hurts themselves, so you can be the first person to like help them out while you go and then get a first aider. Things like that are really useful to have. Yeah, I'd say first aid is a really good one, and just understanding like PPE, so like personal protection equipment, not like the ins and outs, but just being like knowing like what areas you should be wearing stuff. And they'll have signage and stuff, but knowing what those signs mean is always good to know as well. Like we always our workshops were covered in hazard signs of all sorts, so being able to understand them will yeah, just keep you safe. That's a good one. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Got to quickly get through these questions, so if you could have some short but informative answers, that'd be amazing. So Sunny's put in 3 questions, which are actually about how to be a freelance and being, locating for production. So the first one is like, how do you know you can accept jobs at short notice?
Yeah, it's a case by case basis, really. So a lot of my jobs will come in the week before because I'm doing dailies like Lucas talks about on a film at the minute. I'm only getting confirmed for days the week before. So fortunately, I live in North London, so it is easy for me to get to these jobs. Because I drive, so that makes it easier. But public transport around here is great, so you can do that. But I will be in a position this year because I'm moving back up to Nottingham in August. So I will be in the position of trying to make it work. But I know a lot of people that travel in for work. People driving from Brighton. Some people just drive it and do the 2 hour commute back and forth. Not obviously not preferable, but cheap. People get cheap Airbnbs if they live out of the city. People do up camper vans, which is something I'm going to think about.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, yeah, I do fortunately live in London. That's how I've got my base of contacts. Hopefully that'll stay when I'm outside of London. Um, but yeah, case by case basis. If you're free that week, take the job.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, but if it's not convenient, then don't take the job. That like if
Yeah.
you, like I think it's important to maintain your personal life as well. I've had it before where jobs have fell on sort of family weddings and stuff, and like yes, if you're really skint at the time, take the job, but you don't want to miss out on social life things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, yeah, case by case
Yeah.
is what it is. Like I on Star Wars, I got the job and I lived in a hotel for a month until I found a place, and that was just through Spare Room, just a website. People advertise rooms that they've got going in their house. There's also a Facebook page called Crew Rooms as well, which is really good. People just post in there, people that live near studios. So if you find a job and they want you to start in like a week, you can just whack a post in there, and someone might have a room that they will just, yeah, can contact you directly, or you can contact them. Uh, when I was working on Wicked as the dailies contract, I didn't know when I was going to be working till, and I just moved out of Reading and back to Nottingham. So I ended up living in a hotel again for a month, and I don't recommend it. It's not fun unless you like can afford a really swanky one. But Travel Lodge for a month was tough. But basically, yeah, it made it work. It got me down there and it got my foot in the door. But yeah, like Harrison said, if it doesn't seem worth it, don't bother. I'm planning on moving down south eventually, just because hope because unless more work comes up to the Midlands, and then I won't. But yeah, I think if you have an option that you can like you can go, cool, I can take this, and you can find a place quick, then yeah, definitely jump at the opportunity. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to just do two more questions. I know that we've run over. So, uh, Sherry Pot, you mentioned, Lucas, you mentioned earlier, prop person was his name Michael Brooklyn?
Mike McLaughlin.
Mike McLaughlin, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
Mike
yeah.
McLaughlin, he is yeah, he's from North East. Yeah, he's
Mm.
from the Northeast. And he's in between the Northeast and Nottingham and London because I know that he's got a storage unit based here in Nottingham and he's worked on a lot of shorts and features and whatnot. So yeah, Mike McLaughlin was who we spoke about. And Jasmine put a really lovely question in, which I should have asked all of you. What is work going to look like for you in 10 years? Where are you gonna still be in props, or are you gonna be somewhere else?
Oh, in 10 years. I'm hoping to make my own films. Ideal world, I'm making my own films, writing, directing, or whatever. But the path I'm on right now is leading towards sort of prop master. So in 10 years, I could definitely be a prop master on adverts and commercials. So you can work up to that quicker than you can prop master into film and TV.
Yeah.
They're much bigger teams. But I would be on the way to that, which would be very nice for the bank account. Um, that's the direction I'm going. I've got one designer, Ash, I mentioned earlier, who gives me more responsibility now because I've worked with her for 2 years now. So I could maybe say to her in the next couple of jobs, like, or can you try and get me down as a prop master? Because often on her jobs now, it is often her, the designer, and then just me doing props. or I'll be the more senior, which feels weird, of the prop team. So yeah, next step is prop master, or yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll definitely still be in prop making. I've always been a tinkerer, probably always will be. So I'll just like carry on down 10 years time. I mean, if all goes well, I might even be like heading up my own prop manufacturing workshop, which would be pretty cool. Currently just started a new collective of short film with guys all over the country, but we're also trying to build that into a proper production company where I'd probably more likely be heading up like art department as a production designer overall. But that's it. It's whether or not I want to go sort of more into the production design world, which is like technical drawing and planning and budgeting, or staying in the kind of prop making hands-on work experience, which is at the minute definitely the route I think I'm going to go down. So hopefully within 10 years, yeah, either heading up a workshop or maybe even being a production designer, depending what happens.
Amazing. You're going to do it, both of you. You're going to do it. You're so great. You do amazing work. And I've asked this for other people. Is there a film that's recently come out that you think, oh, I wish I'd worked on that? So like, I would have thought Dune, obviously, for locations, and Faye for makeup and special effects, said Nosferatu.
Very true. To be fair, most recent, yeah, June 2 for props is insane. Any Denis Villeneuve film I would kill to work on. I wish I could work on Blade Runner 2049, but I was too young for that. But I know people that did work on it, and I'm eternally jealous. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sort of. I love big sci-fi things, so they're always fun.
Yeah, I haven't done anything that's like a very different genre like sci-fi at the minute. But the prop team I'm working with at the minute, they just came off Frankenstein. That was
Sick.
filming up in Glasgow, like the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein, which would have been
Oh,
cool.
mate.
And
Yeah.
they've shown me a couple of the sets, and it looks so cool. So to be honest, anything that has a very distinct sort of genre or
Mm.
world, I'd love to work on because I haven't done much of that, to be honest.
Yeah. I think yeah, like the more outworldly, the cool. I just felt yeah, that stuff interests me.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with realistic stuff,
yeah.
but same time
Whereas
it's cool to
I
do.
would lose my mind if I got on Star Wars. The kid in me.
It was like every day pinch yourself. What am I actually doing here? Imposter syndrome to the max. But then you just go, no, I'm here for a reason.